The last day of summer, chapter 35, The Horror. Ow! She'd scream, pinching his wrist where Mr. Flux's minion had pricked him with her terrifying needle. Hold still, sir, said the clock watcher, making another torturous attempt. She tore his arm from the monster's grasp and pleaded with Mr. Flux. Please stop. We don't have to do this. Mr. Flux, his head cocked, evaluated the clock watcher's nasty work. I think we do, Rashid. That sleeve is a bit long. Don't you think so, Stitch? A Stitch in Time stood tall, snaking the yellow measuring tape over her shoulder and jabbing the offending needle into the pumpkin-shaped pincushion affixed to her wrist. I refuse to deal with a human who can't appreciate quality tailoring. Frustrated, she huffed away. She'd stared at himself in Stitch's tall mirror and barely recognized what he saw. As Mr. Flux's new second in command, he was required to wear a suit, like when Grandma dragged them to church on Sundays. She'd hated suits, particularly this one, a replica of Mr. Flux's black pants, black jacket, white shirt. The only thing missing was, Here's your hat. Mr. Flux shoved a familiar-looking stovepipe hat at him. When he'd agreed to the deal, he'd been offered, really, what kind of offer was it? Join or freeze? She hadn't known about the dress code. If he had, he might have chosen freezing. His jeans, sneakers, t-shirt, and flamingo jersey lay in a messy pile nearby, abandoned so she could become a mini Mr. Flux. If Otto saw him now. Do I detect sadness, Rashid? Are you reminiscing about your old life? No, because if you were, I'd remind you of how underappreciated you were there and how perfectly appreciated you are here. I gave you a suit. What do you say? Thanks. Mr. Flux placed the hat atop Sheed's head, the brim resting on his brow. Now I have bad news. Your fantastic new suit is going to get dirty. You can blame your cousin for it. Otto? What? Our people have been watching him run around the county, stirring up things. He's planning on an attack soon. When he arrives, I want to be sure you're not confused about your loyalty. His hands caressed the camera around his neck. His thumb hovered by the shutter button. Are you confused, Rashid? Sheed plucked at the fabric of his new shirt, forced himself not to look at his jersey in the corner. No, I'm not. Good. There was a mighty racket outside, crunching steel and shattering glass. Inside the clock tower, the legions of clock watchers scrambled, panicked, because your sweet cousin Octavius is here. Chapter 36, The Battle of Fry. Otto marched into town square with his friends, his heartbeat thumping throughout his entire body. Time Star was at his side, as was Petey. Anna, Archie, and her dad backed him up, along with Petey's mom, because Mrs. Thunkle wasn't letting her love bug go fight a time war without her. Father Time and Game Time, and the second guessers, and the Minutemen, and Dr. Medina, with a pack of assorted animals, who all seemed to, oddly, follow her every command, were present. Mr. James brought his smoker and grill to the edge of the square. His thinking, y'all going to be hungry after all that fighting. If they were still capable of eating. A single shot from Mr. Flux's camera could freeze them all, so Otto made sure to approach the clock tower from an angle where they couldn't be seen from some high window, easy targets. The closer they got, the more Otto understood that Mr. Flux had no intention of fighting at a distance. His clock watchers, dozens upon dozens, spilled from the tower, filling the square, meeting them head on. Then there were the time-sucked beasts. While the friendly one they had left grazing by the Eternal Creek now roamed with Otto and friends, at least 10 more were under the command of Flux's army, their duckbills raised high and their frightening honks echoing all through Fry. The last and biggest time-suck clambered down from the clock tower with Mr. Flux himself stuck on his back like a tick. He was not alone. Sheed rode with him, though he didn't look much like Sheed, dressed in a black suit and hat that matched Mr. Flux's. Otto had feared his cousin was being tortured or was time-frozen. This was worse. Confident, really just smug, Mr. Flux rode his time-suck to the front line, facing off with Otto. Only a 30-yard gap and a statue of Fry's founder, Fullerton French Friar, separated them. Raising his hand, Mr. Flux silenced the rowdy rumbling from his troops, who had to outnumber Otto's army 3-1. Mr. Flux halted his time-suck, then stood tall on its back, like when Sheed stood on his bike seat while it was still rolling, nearly giving Grandma a heart attack. He surveyed Otto's troops bask in his supremacy. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you're here. It gives me such great pleasure to accept your surrender in person. Time Star gave a go-ahead nod. Otto cleared his throat and said, We want you to unfreeze time, then leave. You're not welcome in Logan County. But I like it here. I've made new friends. Isn't that right, Rashid? Sheed rose to his feet, much more wobbly than when he did the bike seat trick, but managed to find his balance next to his new twin, Mr. Flux. Both of their hats slanted in the same eerie manner as Sheed said, Yep. Lene Ellison did not take it well. Sheed? What do you think you're doing? You're going to fall and break your neck. Get down here. You belong with us. No, dear, he belongs with the winners. Mr. Flux raised the camera, aimed it at Otto's entire crew. I'm going to give the smart ones among you the time it takes to run from your side to mine before I press this little button and turn you all into monuments like Fullerton French Fire here. How's that? Sheed tapped Mr. Flux's shoulder. Yes, Rashid? Sheed swung a swift roundhouse kick into Mr. Flux's groin. Flux, oof, clenched his knees together, then toppled sideways on his furry steed's broad back, accidentally firing off a camera shot that froze a time suck and several members of the Flux army to his immediate left. Flux's time suck was startled by the flash. It shuffled side to side, knocking down nearby clock watchers. Still, Sheed remained on its back with the stunned Mr. Flux and shouted, Dude, that's my cousin down there. I'm always picking him over whoever, no matter how big a jerk he is. Thanks, Sheed, Otto shouted back, I think. Cheers erupted from Otto's army. Otto yelled to Sheed, Get the camera! To everyone else, Charge! Sheed bent over Mr. Flux, snatching up at the camera strap. The kick didn't keep Flux down long. His arm stretched, and he grasped the time suck's tail, yanking himself away from Sheed's grasp while aiming the camera at him. Oh, no, you don't! Time Star hurled a mousetrap provided by Archie's hardware store. It cartwheeled end over end, snapping onto Mr. Flux's shooting hand. He yelped, firing another inadvertent camera flash, catching a few of Otto's second guessers. The shot and stout clock watchers shouted, Crud! In frozen unison. Sheed abandoned the camera grab mission and dived off the time suck's back. He grabbed a thick tuft of fur on the way down, breaking his fall, while also causing the beast to honk and buck in pain. Mr. Flux hung on for all his worth. Sorry, Sheed apologized to the beast. He released the fur, hit the ground at a roll, popped to his feet, and sprinted through the chaotic battle. Otto! Sheed! Otto rushed into the thick of it, ducking, dodging, hopping over all the little skirmishes that broke out. Game Time and Crunch Time engaged in a particularly sweaty and determined fencing match. Their improvised swords, a fireplace poker, and a snow shovel handle whizzing and clanking. Dr. Medina's entire menagerie of animals, dogs, cats, snakes, a wild-eyed goat, even a quartet of guinea pigs, launched coordinated attacks at her prompting. A veterinarian barked, and the dogs fell on a squadron of business hours, chewing through their briefcases and shiny leather shoes. Switching to meows, she directed the cats in a stealthy flanking attack. The goat battered a clock watcher that made a swiping grab at Otto. The guinea pigs used Otto's head as a springboard, flinging themselves at a large time suck's eye. Sheed caught glimpses of his cousin through the melee, and did what he could to assist other combatants as he attempted to reunite with Otto. Some well-timed tripping and shoving helped sway a couple of small fights. The battle raged in every direction, though. As part of a two-pronged attack, PM flashed around various assailants at high speed, leaving mirrors confiscated from Mrs. Nedrawl stuck in midair. Having been instructed by Otto, the closest human executed the second part of the attack by unfreezing a mirror so it shattered on the ground, unleashing the groping monster prisoner inside, which attacked Flux's troops without mercy. Lene Ellison made her way to the top of the founder's statue, where she flung what looked like small frisbees from her tool belt. The disc sprouted thin, wiry legs like spiders and skittered into the crowd, where they affixed themselves to Mr. Flux's troops, delivering electrical charges that sent them yelping up and out of the frame. Anna and Mr. Archie got in the act, swinging a rake and a length of plastic pipe, respectively, swatting clock watchers like giant bugs. And Father Time, oh, Father Time, danced through the battle with a wooden cane he twirled like a ninja staff. He jabbed and parried and thrust, cutting a path any way he wished. At every position, anywhere on the Fry Town Square battlefield, the brigade Otto had assembled fought valiantly. It wasn't enough. Mr. Flux had the numbers. The camera, no longer stunned by Sheed's betrayal, enraged, screaming, he aimed the lens into the crowd and fired. Lightning bright flashes doused swaths of combatants, freezing them mid-punch, mid-kick, mid-retreat. It didn't matter if they were his troops or Otto's. His wrath had no targets, just release. Sheed kept pushing his way to Otto, seeing the residual camera flashes from the corner of his eye like quiet lightning in a distant cloud. Lean spotted him from her statue perch, took a moment to curtsy, wave at him, then cupped a hand to her mouth. Wiki, AM, now! In a blur, Wiki Ellison appeared next to her sister, dropped off by the speedster Golden Hour, who'd already zoomed away. She'd stopped at the statue base and watched the sisters bicker as usual. Lean said, Where is it? You didn't hurt it, did you? It's been chasing me all over town, Wiki snapped. It's coming. Have a little faith. She'd yelled up, Hey, what's the plan? Wiki said, Get to Otto. We're good here. More flashes popped. More fighters on both sides were frozen and out of the fight. If they didn't do something about Spluck soon. Go, Wiki insisted. He needs you. She left the girls, kept pushing through the crowd. The ground vibrated in many earthquakes. What was happening? Otto leapt over a mirror tentacle and one of Dr. Medina's snakes as they slinked toward a terrified Flux fighter and wrapped his arms around a startled Sheed. You're okay, Otto said, soaking Sheed's suit coat with sloppy tears. Sheed hugged back. Why are you crying? I thought legends didn't do that. I'm amending our rules. The ground shook more powerfully, knocking the boys off balance. Sheed said, I don't know if we're okay yet. What is that? Maneuver number 74. Sheed shook his head. A new maneuver? Otto grinned. Yep, bring in the robot. Over his shoulder, Sheed spotted the chrome dome and glowing red eyes of Lean's new robot lumbering into the fight. Its head rotated as it locked on to a waving Wiki and Lean at the founder's statue. Over here, they shouted. Mr. Flux's flashes were rapid fire by then, with photos of frozen fighters spooling from the camera and falling to his feet like large, square confetti. So preoccupied with his power, he didn't notice Wiki leaping from the statue, weaving through the remaining fighters, and positioning herself so the robot was on a direct course for her, with Mr. Flux between her and the metal giant. Hey, Flux Face, Wiki yelled. That snatched his attention. He aimed the camera at her. Wiki pointed over his shoulder. You got bigger problems, buddy. A long shadow fell over Mr. Flux. He turned to find the robot looming over him, too close to freeze. Lean pointed at Mr. Flux, yelled, Robot! He's it now. Tag him, Mr. Flux said. Oh no. One bolt-studded metal hand smacked Mr. Flux, sending him airborne in an odd blur of cartwheeling motion. He landed in a pile about 20 feet away from the boys, the camera knocked from his grip. Dazed, he tried to push himself to his feet, reaching for the camera. The robot's rusty metal palm fell on him like a swatter falling on a fly. Cracks webbed from the asphalt beneath Mr. Flux. The robot's hand rose, fell again, and again. Tag, tag, tag! Mr. Flux squawked, ow, 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 with each slap as he flattened into a Flux pancake. The camera remained on the ground near his hand, though as no one seemed willing to get close while the robot delivered its awesome smackdown. The girls sprinted to Otto and Sheed. Wiki said, Is that enough? A golden blur of light, almost too fast to see, rushed between Otto and the camera. Otto said, Now it is. Wiki gave her sister a nod and Lean yelled, Robot, we're it again, me and Wiki. Its red eyes leveled on them. We're going to lead it away. It's your show now, Wiki told Otto on the run. She shouted over her shoulder, Don't mess it up. Lean said, Bye, Sheed. The Epic Ellison girls exited the battle, their rogue robot in pursuit, their part of the maneuver complete. The rest is on us, Otto thought. Come on, time to fix the day. He whistled, calling over the friendly time suck, though not fast enough. The recovering Mr. Flux's limbs and torso retracted quickly from his smush flapjack form to something resembling a human. He whipped his stretchy arm towards his lost camera, reclaiming it. Octavius and Rashid, I think you two need a break. He aimed, fired. The flash blinded the world.